You see, most of us walk through life with a peculiar sense of self, a little I that thinks it is in charge. We believe it is real, permanent, and essential. And yet, if you pause for a moment, if you stop and look carefully, you will find that this I is not what it seems. It is more like a shadow, a reflection, a role we play. And when we speak of losing this ego, or of ego death, most people recoil. The very idea seems frightening, because the ego whispers constantly, "Without me you are nothing. Without me you are lost. Without me you vanish." And so we cling to it. We clutch it. We polish it. We adorn it. We decorate it with achievements, with status, with titles, with the masks we are taught to wear. And every day we feed it stories about who we are, stories about what we have done, and stories about what we hope to be. And yet, the truth is, the ego is not alive in the way we think it is. It is a narrative, a character, a fiction. And life is constantly reminding us that this fiction is, well, optional. One of the deepest fears of the ego is losing control. You see, the ego is always trying to manage reality as though the universe could be commanded, as though existence would bend to its will. And the moment we realize we cannot control, the ego feels threatened. Every unexpected event, every twist of fate, every moment of uncertainty, all are perceived as assaults on this little I we call ourselves. But consider this. Do the trees try to control the wind? Do the rivers resist the mountains? Do the clouds complain about the sun? Nature flows. Life flows. And yet we imagine that we must hold tight, that we must manage, that we must maintain some kind of ownership over ourselves and the world around us. And so we fear. Fear of losing what we imagine is ours. Fear of losing the ego, which ironically was never ours to begin with. The word persona in Latin means mask. And indeed, what we call the ego is a mask. We wear it to interact, to communicate, to function in society. It is necessary. It is useful. But the trouble begins when we mistake the mask for our face, when we believe that the little I inside is who we truly are. And the ego clings to this belief desperately. It fears that the mask might fall, that the illusion might be shattered, that we might glimpse the boundless reality beneath it. And so we tighten, we resist, we fabricate, we perform. We live as if the mask is permanent, as if the character is reality, as if the story we tell ourselves is the universe. Fear is the ego's response to this uncertainty. Fear is the ego's attempt to survive. And resistance is the ego's way of saying, I must hold on. I must protect myself. I must maintain this fiction. And yet, paradoxically, the more we resist, the more tightly we clutch, the more fragile the illusion becomes. The water we try to hold in a clenched fist slips away. The tighter we hold, the more it escapes our grasp. And this is the first lesson about ego death. Not by attacking the ego, not by fighting it, not by trying to destroy it, but by seeing through it, by recognizing its nature, its limitations, its impermanence. Consider the little I you call yourself. It is a tiny entity, a brief spark in a vast unfolding cosmos. It comes and goes, rises and falls, thinks and forgets, loves and fears. And yet, we treat it as though it is the center of existence. We treat it as though the world depends upon its survival. And so fear arises, fear of death, fear of failure, fear of humiliation, fear of losing control, fear that if the ego dissolves, nothing will remain. But listen carefully. What remains is not nothing. The fear itself arises, but it points towards something larger, something timeless, something ungraspable. The ego fears its own dissolution because it senses the vastness that cannot be contained. Ego death is not always a dramatic event. It does not always happen in meditation or in the psychedelic experience. Sometimes it occurs in the small, quiet moments, when a child laughs and you realize you are not needed to control the moment, when you watch a sunset and forget yourself in its beauty, when you listen to music and lose all sense of time and self, In these moments, the ego falls away naturally. Not because it is attacked, not because it is defeated, but because the mind stops clinging. And in that surrender, there is freedom, there is peace. There is a recognition that the little I was never as solid, as permanent, as real as it thought it was. Again, we say, the ego is a mask. But let us say it differently. The ego is a story that changes constantly, that grows and shrinks, that can be rewritten at any moment. And when the ego dies, what dies is not you. What dies is the story you have been clinging to. And again, the ego whispers, without me, you will vanish. But what you are cannot vanish. What you are cannot be grasped, cannot be defined, cannot be owned. And once more, resistance strengthens fear. Acceptance dissolves it. The more you try to hold the ego, the more anxious you become. The more you allow it to flow, the more you experience its illusory nature. Here is the paradox. The ego must die for freedom to arise, and yet the ego never really lived. So there is nothing to fear, nothing to lose, nothing to defend. The ego fears the dissolution that is already occurring every moment of your life. The river flows, the leaves fall, the seasons change, and still we clutch, still we resist. Letting go does not end life. It begins life. Letting go does not destroy you, it awakens you. Surrender, you see, is not weakness. Surrender is intelligence. Surrender is the recognition that life is not a problem to be solved, but a dance to be experienced. And so the ego must step aside. It must release its grip, even if only for a moment, even if only for a breath. And in that breath, you may feel the vastness, the beauty, the playful, infinite flow of existence. And the ego, trembling, watches, and slowly, quietly, learns that it is not the master it thought it was. So, do not fear the death of the ego. Do not clutch it as though it is life itself. Do not resist the flow of the universe. The ego is a mask, a story, a role. It is not who you are. And when the mask falls, the story ends, but the dancer continues. The universe continues. You continue. And perhaps in the letting go, you will discover something wonderful, that what you are has never been small, that what you are cannot be lost, that the little I you cling to was never the center, only a lens through which the infinite could glimpse itself. And so, let the ego tremble, let it fear, let it whisper, and quietly, calmly surrender. For in that surrender, there is freedom. In that surrender, there is life. In that surrender, you are not lost. You are, as always, here. You might notice, if you watch carefully, that this little I you call yourself seems to react to everything. It feels pride when praised, fear when threatened, desire when longing arises. And yet, who is experiencing these reactions? The I thinks it is real, permanent, commanding, but pause for a moment and you will see it is merely responding like a leaf caught in the wind. And isn't it curious how the more the ego tries to assert itself, the more apparent its fragility becomes? Each attempt to dominate life, to secure permanence, to grasp the ungraspable, only reveals that it is an illusion. The ego fears chaos because it confuses the flow of life with personal failure. It resists events it cannot command, situations it cannot predict, feelings it cannot suppress. And yet, observe nature. The river does not resist the rocks, the wind does not struggle against the mountains, the clouds drift with the Sunday. And we, who imagine ourselves the captains of existence, clutch more tightly to the illusion of control. Every unexpected event, every accident, every surprise, all are gentle reminders that control is an idea, not a reality. And in that recognition, the first spark of freedom appears. Consider the mask again. It protects you. It allows you to move through the world without chaos. But what if you glance behind it, even briefly, even for a heartbeat? You see that beneath it, there is no solid I. Only the universe dancing through this form. And the beauty of the mask is this: it can be worn lightly with awareness. One can perform in the world without mistaking the role for the actor, without confusing the mask for the self. The ego does not need to be destroyed, it only needs to be understood. And in understanding, it gently relaxes its grip. Ego death can occur in the simplest acts. Watching someone else succeed and feeling joy rather than envy. Letting go of a plan, realizing that life has its own unfolding. Experiencing silence, sitting quietly, and noticing that the constant inner chatter has paused. In these small moments, the ego slips away, and a deeper awareness takes its place. You realize again and again that the fear of losing the ego was never justified. It was a shadow chasing a shadow. Let us say it differently. The ego is like a character in a story. It comes and goes, rises and falls, thinks it commands, but it is only passing through. Death of the ego is not loss. It is awakening. Clutching strengthens fear. Releasing softens it. Let go a little. Breathe a little. Notice the space where the I thought it stood and feel the freedom that arises there. Imagine just for a moment that you could let the ego tremble. Let it whisper. Let it fear. Let it speak its stories. And you, calmly, simply watch. You do not correct it. You do not destroy it. You do not resist it. You notice it. And in noticing, it begins to dissolve, not violently, but naturally. And again, the one who was afraid of death, the one who clings, the one who whispers incessantly, was never alive in the way it imagined. It is a role, a shadow, a mask. And in the quiet moments of surrender, you are revealed not as a little I, but as the endless, ungraspable flow of existence itself. So, do not fear. Do not clutch. Do not resist. The ego will tremble, yes. It will whisper. It will panic. And you, calmly, can watch. You are not the mask. You are not the story. You are not the fleeting thought. You are the dance itself, the river itself, the vast, unending sky in which all events appear and vanish. And in that recognition, in that gentle surrender, there is peace, there is freedom, there is life without fear, and the ego, finally, learns to rest. And now, having seen the nature of the ego, its fears, and its illusions, we begin to notice something curious. The ego is not the only thing we cling to. We also cling to ideas, beliefs, stories about life, about the world, about what it means to be happy or successful. And in this clinging, the mind creates boundaries, separations, distinctions that are not ultimately real. Just as the ego whispers, I must survive, I must control, I must define myself, so too do our ideas and beliefs whisper, this is true, that is false, this is right, that is wrong. And we build walls, not just around ourselves, but around the universe, trying to cage reality in neat boxes. But pause for a moment and reflect, are these boundaries real, or are they just convenient maps, stories that help us navigate the landscape of existence? The ego fears that letting go of separation will mean chaos. But in truth, what seems like chaos is simply the dance of life, moving beyond our judgments and expectations. The separation we feel between self and other, life and death, pleasure and pain, is mostly imagination. And when we loosen our grip on these illusions, we begin to see that life is a continuous, unbroken flow. And in seeing this, we notice that freedom is not about controlling life. Freedom is about participating in life without the need to own it, define it, or constrain it. Another lesson comes from noticing the opposites, light and dark, pleasure and pain, success and failure, life and death. The ego struggles because it wants only one side, fearing the other. It seeks perfection, stability, and security. But life is a play of opposites, a dance of contrasts. Without darkness, light would have no meaning. Without failure, success would be empty. Without the sense of loss, gain would not be cherished. And the ego, when it loosens its grip, begins to see this dance not as a threat, but as a play. And in play, in the recognition of opposites, the fear begins to dissolve. And as the ego begins to soften, we encounter the idea of impermanence. All things change. All things flow. All things are temporary. The little I will rise and fall. Circumstances will come and go. Relationships will form and dissolve. Thoughts will appear and vanish. The ego fears this impermanence. But when we begin to witness it with calm attention, we see that change is not an enemy. Change is life itself. And in accepting impermanence, we accept that we are not separate, not fixed, not alone. We are a part of the continuous, endless flow of being. And once we see beyond the ego, we can begin to explore other questions. What is the nature of consciousness itself? What does it mean to be free from attachment, not only to self, but to ideas, to possessions, to outcomes? How do we live fully without the constant chatter of I must, I need, I should? These questions lead naturally from ego to awareness, from fear to acceptance, from the illusion of control to the dance of life. And in that awareness, we begin to glimpse the interconnectedness of all things. The self is not isolated. It is woven into a tapestry of experience, of energy, of life itself. And here, at this edge, we find the doorway to further exploration, the doorway to presence, to mindfulness, to understanding the nature of reality beyond the little I. And so, the little I that feared its own end has softly dissolved like mist in the morning Sunday. What remains is neither loss nor gain, neither sorrow nor joy, but simply the endless flow of life itself. The river moves, the stars continue their dance, the wind whispers, and you are already here, not separate, not absent, but present in the great unfolding. And perhaps, in another moment, another place, another thought, there is more to see, more to feel, more to understand. Life goes on, and the mind, in its quiet surrender, simply listens.